Hi everyone, welcome back to Two Girls, One Crime. I am Megan and this is Emily,
Hey.
and we will be your hosts once again like we are every single week.
Yep.
Um we are going back to our roots, our Milwaukee, Wisconsin roots, and
Mm-hmm.
talking about a crime that's a little lesser known. Um Again, another mystery, but very, very fascinating on its own. And that is Stephanie Casberg,
Mm-hmm.
or Stephanie Marie Casberg.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, not a super big crime in the Milwaukee area. I didn't know about it until we did a little more research on it. So,
Yeah.
it's not really talked about, but very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So to get us started, Emily's going to do a little bit of our traditional background, a little bit deep dive, and we'll get into it.
Yes. So, again, same as Megan, I hadn't really heard of this before. We were looking up some Milwaukee crimes because Megan is moving away, so this is our last podcast where we're both in Milwaukee.
Okay, I was
Not
gonna
not
say, I
forever,
was,
don't worry.
I was like, let's
Surprise.
rephrase.
No. The last one where we're both in the same city and state. So,
Sad.
we felt that this was kind of a fitting one to do a Milwaukee episode. So, again, we hadn't heard of this. It was just the 50th anniversary of her case 7 years ago. So it was kind of back in the media a few years ago. But, anyways, so Stephanie Marie Casberg. She was living in Wisconsin, and this case happened in July of 1969, where she was 17 years old and she had just recently graduated from high school, more specifically Riverside High School. And she actually worked at this restaurant, which is not there anymore, but it was called Mark's Big Boy Restaurant, and it's on Van Buren if you know the Milwaukee area. A little bit about her: she lived at home with her 6 brothers, and everybody loved Stephanie. According to a family friend, she was, quote, she was very popular, did a lot of dating, and she was a very good student. So, again, this did happen a while ago, so there wasn't a ton of information on her background, but we do know that on her way to a Sunday night shift, she at the restaurant, she was last seen there. So her shift was 6:37 on Sunday to 12:30 a.m. on Monday, and that was the last time that she was seen. So
Hmm.
that's kind of all the background we have. We know she was a 17-year-old girl working at this restaurant, and that was the last time that she was seen. So,
Yeah, so kind of diving into afterwards, like Em mentioned, Sunday night she disappears.
yeah.
What the crime is a boy and his son were going fishing and found her head had been dismembered. She had severed head, arms, legs, torso, um, and kind of similar to like our last couple of crimes we've actually talked about,
Mm-hmm.
her dismemberment seemed professional. They knew what they were doing, knew
Yeah.
where to kind of sever the limbs. So just being mindful of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, her there were a couple different items that were found, or like things that we'll dive a little bit deeper into,
Mm-hmm.
but that were kind of coming up. So her purse was found nearby. There was a torn up picture of her as well that was a little couple miles away from where
Mm-hmm.
her body was found. um to this day, there were no suspects that were determined.
Mm-hmm.
There was limited amount of evidence at the time, and there's some evidence where it could kind of be seen as like, oh, this could be something, but it was very vague to where it could have just been trash on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Um, Fingerprints and DNA were run, but unfortunately, it wasn't linked to anybody in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, kind of more specifically, because it's a very vague overview, and we can kind of pinpoint a little bit of dates out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Wednesday, July 9th, 1969, a man and his 2 sons actually went fishing off of 8 Mile Road Bridge, which I don't know where this is. It might have been changed because of everything, but who knows? And instead found her on the banks of Root River. They found a right human leg.
Mm-hmm.
Later, they found sheriff office found both arms. The head was wrapped in a Milwaukee newspaper dated June 24th and stuffed into a large paper bag. So her head was stuffed into that large paper bag, and around it had a Milwaukee newspaper dated from June 24th.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Em can kind of talk a little bit about what was found on the scene. And again, some of this stuff was found over a couple of weeks after the crime. She
Yeah.
wasn't even, all of her body parts weren't found, but
Mm-hmm.
it's very interesting.
Yeah. So some evidence found both on site and around Milwaukee, like Megan said. There was a bronze triangular shaped earring with a blue oval stone that was found on her ear. Which again, we don't know where the other one is, I guess.
Hmm.
There was a brown shoe that was found nearby where she was. And there was her pink blanket and her purse were farther upstream. So those were found a bit farther from where her body was. And next to a road, there was actually a torn up picture of Stephanie that was found far away from her body in Franklin. So that kind of all is sort of, evidence connecting back to her. And again, like Megan said, there could be a lot more. It was hard to kind of connect it back. Again, it could be trash or it could be, part of it. So I think that her
Yeah.
blanket, a shoe nearby, her purse, the picture of her torn up, and obviously the earring on her ear were the main pieces of evidence that were found.
Yeah. There was also, there wasn't a lot of information on this, but there
Yeah.
was a military type jacket, like a brown military jacket that was found
Mm-hmm.
near her as well. But again, like we've said a couple of times now, it could have just been trash, and that wasn't like a main part of like the crime in particular.
Yeah. I also just looked up where 8 Mile Bridge is, and it's now called the Seven Bridges Trail in Grant Park in South Milwaukee.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
that blows my mind a little bit
Yeah.
because I feel like I look at that place, I was like, oh, it's just a nice park, and little did we know that there was a dead
Yeah.
body that was found.
Yep. Yep. So we definitely know where that area is for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
So with that being said, so cause of death,
Yeah.
kind of looking into that on July 10th, so a day after the murder, the medical
Mm-hmm.
examiner could not officially determine the cause of death. To this day, it's kind of still up in the air, but there's a little bit more information on it.
Yep.
I did identified a couple of different things. He said clearly there were dismemberment that occurred with a sharp object
Mm-hmm.
that removed at the joints.
Mm-hmm.
And the quote that the medical examiner used was like a butcher would do. So again, kind of going back to there was that professional ability, like kind of knew what was going on maybe with the body.
Yeah.
There were no broken bones, serious abrasions, or concussions, which Emily contusions, which
Yeah.
Emily informed me was bruises that were present.
Yeah.
So,
So there were no like scratches, broken bones, or bruises found on
hmm
her body.
And then originally there was a report that there were two small like puncture wounds in the side of her neck, but it kind of went back and forth for a while. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them said that it was just kind of there, others said that it wasn't. Um, but on August 6th of that same year in 1969, it was determined that she probably died of a stab wound to the neck.
Mm-hmm.
The medical examiner estimated that she died between Monday, July 7th on a Tuesday to July 8th. So 1 to 2 days before she was found on the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't clarify if she was dumped somewhere. They don't know
Mm-hmm.
if she was cut up and then brought somewhere. They didn't say anything like that. And again,
And
kind
since
of going
everything
back.
was so spread out, it is interesting to think like, you know,
Yeah,
especially off of the bridge, like water moves things. She could have been moved, and so it's
hmm
interesting to think about.
For sure. And here's the thing that's very interesting. So 2 weeks later, on July 21st, she was found on the 9th. Skeletal remains of Stephanie's torso and one leg was found 5 miles away from the original site.
Mm-hmm.
Two things that they noted, and this is a little interesting, but found a sun-kissed cardboard box, which they noted. They said it could have been trash. It could have been a part of this. The other one, this was horrible, but the part of the pelvis bone was discovered because a dog brought it home, and that's how the rest of her remains were kind of found. And Obviously, that's horrible for the people who had to figure that out, but
Hmm.
there is a little bit of that peace knowing, right? Like the family did end up finding everything, and obviously they didn't get the answers they were wanting, but hopefully a little
Right.
bit more.
Yeah. So that kind of moves us along to some suspects and some theories. Um, so again, there wasn't a ton of information about her or this case, but we do know that a lot of people questioned were those in her life, like teachers, friends, coworkers, people she had dated, because her family friend said that she was a big dater. So a lot of them
Mm-hmm.
were, asked things. Um, so, kind of a suspect slash theory is that this man was actually found dead in his car near where some of her remains were found, which we know from this story that that was actually caused by suicide. So that seemed to be maybe a connection, which was later ruled out. And so this is kind of a big part. So during the investigation, one of Stephanie's coworkers was actually attacked by a man at the restaurant a month before her death, but was not reported to the police. So
Mm-hmm.
that seems a little bit, connected, obviously. So again, in the report, we learned that the coworker was leaving the restaurant around 12:30. This man grabbed her and had a sharp object to her neck and said, "I will cut your head off." Um, Again, seems pretty similar to maybe what happened in Stephanie's case. Same timing, same
Mm-hmm.
neck with a sharp object. And clearly, this person did not have a problem with cutting her head off. Perhaps that is connected in Stephanie's case as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so in this case, this coworker actually was safe. Another coworker saw and fought off the man and ran away. So this man was described as a 5'8", around 20-year-old with light brown or blonde hair and a light jacket. So again, the
Mm-hmm.
jacket could maybe be connected to what was found with Stephanie's case, but again, we don't know.
Yeah,
But
and
that
I
is
think
interesting. The same restaurant, same timing, same age girl, same scenario. So,
yeah, and I find it so interesting where this makes no sense, but also keeping in mind that it was like the 70s, right? So
yeah,
sometimes like things just happen, but the police report later or what they found in the investigation was this came out after she had disappeared. So this
yeah,
was not a thing
yeah. It
when she
wasn't
was
reported to the
alive.
police,
No, they never
and it
said a word
happened a
about
month
it.
earlier.
Hmm. Yeah.
Craziness. That doesn't
Yeah.
seem
And
like a coincidence.
no, and who knows? I think this part that we're going to talk about is kind of like the another suspect. So,
Yeah.
and then we can kind of bring it all together. But two
Hmm.
decades later, in March of 1988, a new suspect kind of came into light.
Hmm.
A woman called believing that her brother was involved, and I couldn't find the name of this man, but she she told the police that multiple individuals in her family believed that he was involved in some way, shape, or form. There was weird connections. She did say that members of the family lied to the police when they were doing investigations. He lied to the police, came out with this. She said her brother worked at the restaurant with Stephanie the night she disappeared. And interestingly enough, so again, she was murdered, she was found on July 9th. Keep
Hmm.
in mind, she was murdered on either the 7th or the 8th, according to the medical examiner. And he moved to Hawaii on July 15th of 1969. And on top of that, what's incredibly interesting is that her family, we'll say this woman claimed it was out of the blue. There
Hmm.
was no planning. It wasn't like he was going. He just decided to up and move to Hawaii. And
Literally a
one thing
couple
with
days after she was
literally a couple
found.
of days.
Yeah.
And what was interesting was the Milwaukee and Honolulu police never interviewed him,
Hmm.
and he just kind of went on his way. I want to say that I did see when researching this that he was ruled out, but at the same time, they never interviewed him to kind of see what he was. But it just seems like there's a lot of that connection. And again, like the guy before, right, who threatened a coworker, that sort of thing. could have been the same employee, who knows?
Right.
And he just continued to move on with his life and all those things, which this one in particular I do find super fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of along the same lines as this brother, there was actually another girl that came out and said that she knew, in quotes, that her father killed Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
The father had since died, but she kept posting on these like threads being like, I know my father did it. Stephanie's family reach out to me. And again, nothing really came from that, but I thought that that was interesting that she was literally posting everywhere on these like threads. It looked like Reddit threads type of thing, but it was this like commentary spot where she just kept writing that she knew her father did it.
Well, and
So
it's
that
so
is,
hard because
yeah,
at the same time, it's like you think about, I'm trying to think of one in particular, but you know those ones where it's like they're kind of like fake in a way,
yeah,
where they're like, oh, like this person did, like the Zodiac killer,
yeah,
or we just talked about it. But like family members who come out later
yeah,
and they're like, "Oh, well my like dad did this." And it was like, "Well, no, dad like never had a connection. He just was a weird guy." So who
yeah.
truly knows?
Yeah, and this one, I do agree with that fully because that happens in literally every case ever. But this one, she like wrote a few different times, a few different years. So that I was
Hmm.
like, like she's persistent with it at least.
Yeah. Well,
So
another Oh,
you can
wow,
go.
we're just
Look at us.
the final kind of theory, and this one's more vague, I would say, than the rest, is again, like I mentioned earlier, Um, Stephanie was someone who dated a lot of people in high school, went on a lot of dates per se, and started dating this individual who is in a Puerto Rican gang. The person who commented on this said that the boys and the person she dated were very dangerous, and if she rejected one or broke up with them, they could have killed her, they could have harmed her, harassed her. So, again, this one is just a very vague one. We don't have any proof in particular that she did date someone in a Puerto Rican gang or what this gang was.
Right.
Um, and this person was in high school, so keeping that in mind as well.
Yeah.
But that I would say is probably like the least believable one.
Right.
But the other three are very like, this seems a little too coincidental.
Yeah, I do. It is hard, like we said, to believe. I guess the ones where it's like, oh, my brother or my father, because like we've said, they
Hmm.
really do. A lot of people just make stuff up to get attention or like reward money. We've seen that in a lot of cases. So, but I do think that the one where her coworker experienced basically the same thing,
Hmm.
it's just so it's so weird. And
Hmm.
like late at night, like 12:30 after midnight, alone walking in a parking lot and he comes up to her. Like that coworker was lucky that someone was there to fight him off, but I can see in a lot of instances someone wouldn't have, and that kind of brings that brother into play too. Like he was working there on that same night. Like I wonder if he was working there on the same night as the other girl too.
And also, it could have been like, who knows where he walked her home or drove her home. I don't know how she got there, and or he followed her home,
Yeah.
killed her, and then that's where it went off to. Or it even could have been like, well, maybe he wasn't at the restaurant that night, but he was off of work and he knew that a girl was going to be there and just
Yeah.
was like, I don't care who it is. This girl happened to get really lucky, but then Stephanie kind of fell victim to it. And
Yeah.
especially, this is where my mind also goes, I don't know what the guy did at the restaurant, but if the medical examiner is saying that it's kind of like a butcher would do,
Yeah.
he would in some way possibly also have experience in a restaurant, like cutting things, doing stuff like
Right.
that, and maybe this kind of translated into what he did to Stephanie as well.
Right, for sure. And I also think it's like someone at least had to know kind of the timing of when they got off, or like someone
Hmm.
who's familiar with the area or the, like schedule of this restaurant
Yeah.
beyond just like when it closed. Because a lot of times
Mhm.
employees stay later to clean up or whatever. So I feel
Yeah.
like it had to at least be someone who, was somewhat familiar with the area.
Yeah, and it's like her body again was found in a river or
Yeah.
stream or whatever you want to call it, and that means either that person took her to this area, or it could have been that he threw her in the river thinking like, oh, it would go into the lake and no one would ever see her again.
Yeah.
Like, very much has an idea of like why you're doing the things, and it wasn't just like, oh, I'm gonna kill her here and just hope that no one ever comes here.
Right. No, it definitely seemed to be premeditated in a way. And something that I don't know if we touched on, but a lot of investigators actually do think that if this killer is still alive, he is likely in the Milwaukee area, which is so
Hmm.
spooky. Like, again, this was a while ago, so who knows how old he would have been at the time or now, anyways, but if he is alive, he is likely still here.
That's so scary.
Yeah. And
Oh,
I
that's
do
so
also
scary.
wonder, like, again, whoever this is likely targeted this restaurant twice. Did they target it more than twice? Did they target other restaurants that again just haven't been connected? And also,
Hmm.
like, this person was described as like a 20-ish year old. So, like,
Hmm.
did he know them like from school or something? And did he just like lure them in? Like, again, we just don't know, which is like so crazy. And that's like where my mind goes to also, is just like,
Hmm.
what the heck happened?
Yeah, and it's like to this day, I believe after all of this came out, obviously her family was like, help us figure out who it is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the 70s, there's not a lot of cameras. Milwaukee's a very interesting area in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like, and I know that it has never been like the best city in terms of like crime. And if you think about it, like Jeffrey Dahmer was here
Yeah.
20-ish years later, 30 years
Mm-hmm.
later. And there were worse crimes that came out of that, but like
Mm-hmm.
little things, right? And if you start to think about it, it's like how much time and effort is also going into finding one person. Like if nothing similar
Right.
is happening, Milwaukee police aren't always amping to go figure that out, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I think that's similar in a lot of places, but I do think it was kind of interesting how, since it did hit this 50-year, I guess, anniversary,
Hmm.
I like 7-ish years ago, it was actually like, investigated sort of again, and nothing came out of it again. So I think it is hard to use evidence from back then to try to solve a case now,
Hmm.
and
Well,
that
I'm
is really
curious.
hard.
Yeah, and I'm curious with like the newspaper. That's one thing that gets me where it's like,
Yeah,
okay, like could you not technically track like where the newspapers were? Like June
right.
24th, someone was holding on to it. And like, if you think about it, this just came to head. Like a butcher, right? They wrap meat up in paper bags and newspapers. Was this a
Yep,
similar aspect to where it was like, oh, like
yep,
put it in the paper bag newspaper, someone who's affiliated with the restaurant. Like there's just a lot of connections here that like fit into the puzzle piece, but like it won't quite
match
like
up.
clamp down. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that is like a very good point with the butcher. Like, I'm like, I wonder if any butchers were, investigated against anyone at the restaurant. Like, they had to have questioned them, and like
Mhm.
nothing came to be. So it's just
Mhm.
like, oh, it's so frustrating. I wish we could like go back and just like collect all of the evidence and like just figure it out. Again, that's not
Mhm.
going to happen in every case, and we've talked about a lot of like unsolved ones recently, and just because it gets our minds like, working and like thinking about like what the heck happened.
Mhm. Well, it's
So,
interesting to talk about, and especially ones where it's like a teenage girl who she had no title, she wasn't involved in anything in particular that
yeah,
got her to stand out in the community. It wasn't like John Bonet where she was someone who was in some ways the public eye
yeah,
where okay, you can see that connection. It was just some random person who was just living their life and then happened to unfortunately get into not the best situation.
right. And it's like she wasn't killed for money or like anything like
Mm-mm.
that. And even with the Black Dahlia case we talked about last week, it's like she wasn't even a famous actress, or like she was just aspiring, and like this is just a girl who graduated high school who's working this job probably
Hmm.
to make money for her future. And so it's just like, why was she targeted besides possibly like just her looks? Like it's just, I don't know, it's so hard to think about, and it's like hard to like come up with a reason as to why she was chosen.
Yeah, and it's like I always feel kind of bad where it's like you work through it, and part of me is like, I'm sure there's so much even from the all the crimes we've talked about thus far where if you go into like a police report, right, like it's not documented because they have to keep some of the stuff hidden because they don't want people to know, and let's say the killers are out there to be like,
Yeah.
oh, they're close or whatever. But you
She
just
also
kind of
was
sit there and you're,
17,
she
so
was
she wasn't
17.
even 18. And
No.
yeah.
So it's like I do sometimes think about like, well, what did they do? Because even cases like this where like there's not a lot of information out there, like even news
Yeah.
articles, literally I was reading some of them when we were doing our research and it was like mysterious murder, like still not solved, and you could see the original newspaper, but it wasn't like actually showing, like it just was kind of like there's nothing that's coming up out of this.
Yeah, it was just like a little snippet of like the title basically. It's like, ugh,
Mm-hmm.
like it's hard to, like we've said a million times, it's hard to figure something out when there's not a lot of evidence to begin with. So, and I feel like in this case, it's like, yeah, like her body was found, but again, it was like this person did, it's terrible saying such a good job because that's not what I mean in a positive way, but like
Yeah.
they really did cut up her body to barely make it be found fully until that the dog
Yeah.
found her pelvis or whatever. But it's like this person just did such a good job that it's like they haven't been found. And who knows, they
No.
probably have done it multiple more times in Milwaukee. Nobody knows. Again, Milwaukee
Hmm.
is like an odd city with the crime, where it's like, of course every city is has a crime rate, but
Hmm.
like some areas are better than others. And so like who knows if someone like was killed and honestly never found, and like that's just heartbreaking.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think these are ones that are fun to talk about, just not fun, but interesting, I would say, or I appreciate us kind of putting it out there just
Yeah.
because it is like not super well known and it does keep people kind of, it keeps this person alive, and like
Yeah.
even if you are not from the Milwaukee area, you can kind of research it and you never know what's going to come up with it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and I'm sure, unfortunately, in whatever city you live in while you're listening to this, like there's probably a similar case out there for
Hmm.
you as well. So I think it is nice to be able to like talk about her. Maybe someone who listens is learning about her, and I think for
Hmm.
the family's sake, again, they didn't really get much closure, obviously, as
Yeah.
to who did it or exactly how it happened. But hopefully, talking about her and keeping her memory alive definitely helps out the family a bit.
Hmm. Well, with that being said, obviously, like we mentioned earlier, it's more of like a localized case, but still a
Yeah.
very interesting one. So not a lot of frequently asked questions, but like things that people have kind of looked up about her over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One in particular is this case considered a cold case? Since it happened in 1969, which was 57 years ago, there are no answers. There is no one who was ever arrested.
Mm-hmm.
It is considered a cold case.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just because of the publicity, I'm sure the size, I'm sure there is like a cold case division out there that has this somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not super well known. So it's not one that's necessarily talked about as still being open and they're
Right.
looking into it. Kind of has just become its own little mystery of Milwaukee, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So another one that was kind of like asked, which was something that didn't even really come up in my research. I don't know if it came up in
Hmm.
yours. Well, obviously, the question of did anyone see Stephanie the night of her murder? That obviously came
Hmm.
up. But something that was interesting was that it was first reported that her brother saw her getting into a yellow convertible the night of her murder, which was later taken back, and it was said that her coworkers were the last ones to see her after leaving work. But I thought that was interesting. Like, how did that even come to be? And
Mhm.
I do wonder if like anyone in the Milwaukee area has a yellow convertible. Like, was that ever followed up on, even if it maybe wasn't the complete truth? Like, I do wonder if
Mhm.
that was ever investigated at all. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I also did see that, and I found it like confusing because it's like, well, if someone went missing, why would you say the only reason I could see it is if they were like, "Oh, I thought I was the last one who saw her,
Right.
didn't know she was going to work." But it is kind of like, well, he obviously saw something. So who was this red convertible? Was it a coworker? Was it a friend who drove her to work? Like, who was this? But I also didn't see anything in my research. It was a lot of that um like, oh, Stephanie was leaving the restaurant and that's it. Like
Yeah.
nobody saw where she went. Like I didn't see she walked home, drove home. It literally was just like she left for her shift and that was it. So not a
Yeah.
lot of that out there.
Yeah. And like this, like we said, it's a pretty small case compared to others. And so I feel like a lot of our research was done with like local news articles. So that again is like hard because that's definitely like a bit skewing the information. I feel like
Hmm.
every article is different. So we did our best that we could with what we had.
Yeah. And then kind of the final question out there was still for us as a question. What was the man who attacked Stephanie's coworker involved in the case? Although the police do not confirm or deny whether there was a connection in this case in Stephanie's attack, they actually never found the guy who attacked the coworker. They got a description, but there was nothing that ever came out of it. Nobody ever turned anybody in, reported it. And this individual, as far as we know, never came back to the restaurant after that. So I don't even think the police necessarily know if there's a connection just because they have no clue who this is and they
Yeah,
can't necessarily follow up with it if they have no suspect of like who originally tried to harm someone.
exactly. And it's like it's hard to believe that the coworker or the girl, the coworker or the other coworker who like saved her, it's hard to believe that like they didn't see anything or the police didn't ask for any sketches or anything, but they didn't. So it's there's no way for us or the police to connect them, I guess. It just seems like a lot of like common denominators, which is kind of
Hmm.
weird. So yeah, kind of in conclusion, unfortunately, obviously Stephanie's case was never solved. It was one of the more gruesome cases in the Milwaukee area, and it's definitely unfortunate that we don't know who did this to her. For Milwaukee's sake, for her family's sake, and there's been no answers or justice. And again, her killer is probably somewhere out on the streets of Milwaukee, or if they were older, passed away. But
Hmm.
it's definitely an interesting case to talk about, and it's definitely not talked about a lot. Like, we had never heard of it. We kind of were researching one in the Milwaukee area. Obviously, Jeffrey Dahmer is the more prominent Milwaukee crime that you would think of, but
Hmm.
we wanted to kind of wrap up Megan's Milwaukee time with a
Oh,
Milwaukee podcast episode.
so sad. But you know what? That just means that we're going to be in fun cities and we
Yeah.
can explore more cities that have more murders.
Yeah, we'll get
Um,
to expand our search.
yes.
Yeah.
But again, as usual, appreciate all of you who do tune in. We love to see and hear your guys' feedback, so feel free to leave in
Yes.
YouTube, Spotify, whatever you listen on, in our comment section, what we're doing well, things we can improve. And also, if there's one in particular you are wanting to learn more about or you think we should talk about, because we do read those, we see those, and
Yeah.
we we need them because sometimes we get stuck too.
Yeah, 100%. And go on our TikTok, comment on there too. And
Hmm.
yeah, tell us anybody because we obviously have ideas, but we want to research whoever you guys want to listen to. So comment for sure. And thanks for listening. And we'll see you guys next week.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.